class, in this assignment, we're going to go over our topic 4 assignment called Strategies for Reaching All Learners. This week, we've been learning a lot about differentiation and how we can support our diverse learners within our classroom. For this assignment, you're going to be creating a PowerPoint presentation to highlight what you learned about differentiation and the research around strategies that support students with diverse needs in our classrooms. So you're going to create an 8 to 10 slide digital presentation to showcase a differentiation plan for your students. Now you're going to want to use data from the class profile. And this might be the first time that you've seen the class profile. That can be located in your course materials right here. Let's take a minute to look at that class profile. So you can see in your GCU classes, you will get a class profile like this for most of your classes. And when you submit a lesson plan, you have to pretend that these are your students and this is the data you have on your students. And so when you differentiate, you want to look at who is in your class. And so you can see we do have some English language learners, or Arturo, Diana, Eduardo, Fatima are all English language learners. And so we know that those students are going to need some sort of support with language. So there are some of those students in there. The socioeconomic status also goes into play when we think about, our extensions and what we send home and what kids will have access to. And then you can see students who have an IEP are classified as special education or a 504 plan here. And we do have some learning disabled students and some emotionally disabled students in this class as well. Then when we look here, if it says Tier 2 RTI for reading, that means they're getting an extra intervention for reading. And then so this student, it says, does not have a gifted program, but the student is 2 years above grade level. So we do have a gifted student here for reading at grade level for math. And you can see this first student said 1 year below grade level, and that's why they're getting some Tier 2 reading, is because they're below grade level for reading. And then you can also see, if there's a student here who has hearing aids, that could be a consideration for differentiation, things I need to do to support some of those. And so as you are reading through this, you'll be able to see the math levels of students and the reading levels of students. Depending on which standard you choose, that's going to make a difference in this assignment. If you choose a math standard, you're going to want to look at those math proficiency levels. How many students are at grade level? How many students are above grade level and below? And keep that in mind when you're planning this assignment this week. So that is the class profile. And that's going to inform you for this assignment. So you're going to, where did it go? There you go. So now that you've looked at the class profile, you're going to create a differentiation plan and present it as a digital presentation for the content area and grade level of your choice. So is it going to be for math? Is it going to be for language arts? You could also use science or social studies if that's what you choose to use, but we've been working a lot with language arts and math in this course. So your digital presentation needs to include all of these areas. I would recommend doing a slide and labeling it with the heading for each of these areas, just for clarity for me when I'm grading, because when we look at our rubric, it matches those areas exactly. So helping me find differentiation based on readiness, based on interest. We've got the differentiated instruction, the technology integration, all of these parts that we see here in the assignment are on our rubric. So it'll make it easy for me to grade when I see those headings and I can read exactly your description under each of those headings on your slideshow. So when you're writing this presentation, you're going to want to identify that state standard that you are hypothetically going assess on a recent assessment. So you're pretending that you assessed this on a recent assessment. And then you're going to decide how you're going to group those students based on the testing results from the class profile. So we're going to pretend, let's say we did math, and I have now my data, and then my students here, I can kind of see, we're going to pretend that the data comes off this math proficiency level. So we've got a couple years, they're below grade level, on grade level. And so now you're going to need to create this plan, and you're going to have to identify which students are below level, at level, and above level. So that's going to help you think about those groupings. And so you're going to want to give me a slide that shows that those levels. Then you're going to go into interest and how you're going to explain how you'll determine students' interest in the content. So how will you know how they feel about whatever content you're teaching? It could be the subject in general or the specific content. So if I was doing multiplication, I would see how will I know if they're interested in learning about this? And then give a strategy to use to engage them for those who don't show interest. So how will you determine it? And then what strategy will you use to get them interested if they have low interest? So it might be like, I'm going to tell a story, and I'm going to show a video, or I'm going to do something, or make a role play to get them excited about that learning. You're going to also, on the next slide, you'll want to include some differentiation. So you're going to explain how you'll differentiate instruction based on the results from that recent assessment. We're pretending from our class profile, and then give an example of some appropriate differentiation for your grade level. So knowing we have those English language learners or some special education students with learning disabilities, you can give an example of how you would support them. So I might use something for English language learners, might be sentence frames or sentence starters to help them write. Or I might use pictures or a picture dictionary so they know the words, or a picture word wall so they know what the vocabulary means. And so you'll give you want to give some differentiation ideas that you can use. And maybe for the students that are above grade level, what could you do to challenge them? For those students who are ahead, behind in math, what are you going to do to help them understand when they're 2 years behind? Next slide, you're going to go over technology and how you can use technology to help you with this differentiation. I want you to be specific. So if you say they're going to do a math program to help them, which one, which website, which software, and tell me how you're going to use that specific tool or site to help this learning experience. So if I was doing math, I might look at the tools I already have in the school district I work, if I work at a school district. Do you have something that there's already being used to help kids? For example, in my district, we use a program called Dreambox. I might give them an assignment in Dreambox based on their level, something like that. Progress goals is when you are going, how are you going to determine the goals for each student? So how will you know they're making progress towards that standard? So if we know we've got some students who are 2 years below grade level, we're going to need to, how will I know how will I know what to do and when they've made progress towards that goal? So maybe if I wanted them to understand multiplication and they're not there yet, they're 2 years below grade level, I might look at doing repeated addition first. And then once they get that, I'm going to maybe determine it in small groups. When I pull my small groups, I'll be teaching them and pulling them and getting a check for understanding during those small groups. And then after they get the repeated addition, then I can start maybe with, the making equal groups and seeing if they can do it that way, then I can go to the multiplication. So they should be realistic and really reasonable for the subject matter, the grade level, the strengths, and then their need for growth. Your students who are higher, you might say, I'm going to push them to do 2-digit multiplication because they don't have a need for growth on the standard, but they need to go above level. Then you want to look at your learning preferences on the next slide. So how will your everyday instruction include considerations for learning preferences? For example, your audio learners, your visual learners, learners who like to move, your kinesthetic learners. So how will you think about those different things when planning for instruction? And then finally, a summary and goal setting. So just summarize how data informs instructional decisions in general. So how do I use data to make decisions on what I'm teaching? And then you'll want to discuss those potential outcomes when data is not used to make instructional decisions. For example, if I just plan the whole week and I never look at their exit tickets, and then I move to the next chapter next week, what are the implications of that? What could happen? And then identify one goal for yourself on how you can use data for instructional decision making, differentiating instruction, determining student interest, and using technology. So you want to think about, what do you want to do for yourself to use that data to inform your instruction? It's important that you have a title slide, reference slide, and you use presenter notes in your presentation. If you're not super familiar with using presenter notes, it's really important. I'll go ahead and just open up PowerPoint real quick so I can make sure everybody knows what presenter notes are. So here's one of my slideshows that I have for teaching about standards. And the presenter notes are down here at the bottom. And so you write on the slide your main points, and then you write your extended information here, and then you can do your citations here as well. So you have bullet points and shorter verbiage on your slides. Really love to see those visuals on the slide, and then your longer writing extensive notes here. So if you're presenting this, you'd know exactly what you were talking about and saying to your audience. If you have any questions as you're working on this assignment, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like I showed you, the rubric aligns exactly with each of these areas. So make sure just labeling these as your different slides will make it really seamless grading for both you, and making sure you hit all the points, and then I'm able to find them when I'm grading. All right, if you have any questions, reach out to me. Have a wonderful afternoon.